All right. Let's dive into noise, a flaw in human judgment.
Okay.
It seems like from the excerpts you sent over that you're really interested in how this noise thing, uh, affects our decisions,
Yeah.
not just in like the big professional world, but in everyday life too.
Absolutely. And the book does just a fantastic job of
Yeah.
really showing just how pervasive noise is in our lives.
So before we really get into the nitty-gritty,
Right.
can you kind of set the stage for folks who
Yes.
haven't had a chance to read the book yet?
Yeah.
What's the core message of noise?
Sure. So at its heart, noise is a call to recognize that our judgments and decisions
Okay.
are far more variable and less reliable than we tend to think.
Hmm.
And it's about understanding that even when we are striving to be objective
Yeah.
and consistent, there are these hidden factors that are introducing this variability.
Yep.
And that variability, that's the noise, has real-world consequences.
So it's not just about like, oh, I'm a little bit off here or there.
Right.
It's about how these inconsistencies actually can really mess things up.
Exactly. Think about it.
Yeah.
If a judge is giving wildly different sentences for the same crime depending on their mood, that's a problem.
Oh, yeah.
If a doctor's diagnosis is changing based on how much sleep they got,
Yeah, that's a problem for
that's
sure.
a problem, right?
Yeah.
And the book is arguing that this kind of inconsistency is everywhere.
Wow.
From hiring decisions
Yeah.
to medical diagnoses to financial forecasts.
Oh, wow. Okay.
It's everywhere.
So I'm starting to see why this is something you'd want to understand better.
Yeah.
A lot of people talk about bias these days.
Right.
How is noise different from bias?
That's a crucial distinction.
Okay.
And the book uses a really helpful analogy.
Okay.
Imagine you're at a shooting range.
Okay.
Bias is like aiming at the wrong target altogether.
Okay.
So you might be consistently hitting the same spot.
Yeah.
But it's the wrong spot.
Okay.
Noise, on the other hand, is about inconsistency.
Right.
Even if you're aiming at the right target, your shots are scattered all over the place.
Oh, I see.
Right.
Okay, so bias is about accuracy
Yes.
and noise is about consistency.
Exactly. And what's surprising is just how much noise there is in areas where we assume judgment should be pretty objective.
Okay, so give me an example.
Sure.
Where does this noise really show up in a way that, might surprise people?
Well, the book opens with a really striking example from the world of asylum decisions. Turns out that the chances of an applicant being granted asylum in the U.S.
Wow.
can be incredibly inconsistent.
Really?
One judge might admit only a tiny fraction of applicants, while another judge, looking at very similar cases,
Wow.
admits the vast majority.
That's unsettling.
Right.
I mean, you'd hope those decisions are based on, clear criteria, not just on who happens to be presiding over your case.
Exactly, and that's just one example.
Right.
The book goes on to show how noise affects everything from medical diagnoses to insurance underwriting to hiring decisions.
Okay, so noise is real.
Yeah.
It's widespread. It can have serious consequences.
Yeah.
Why should I care?
You should care.
How does this affect me in my day-to-day life?
Well, think about any decision you make where you are trying to be objective, where you think you are evaluating things fairly.
Okay.
Maybe you're deciding between job candidates,
Yeah.
or you're evaluating investment options,
Wow.
or even just choosing which movie to watch.
Okay.
Noise can creep into all of those judgments, making them less reliable than you might think. Right.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm starting to see how this noise thing could really be lurking everywhere.
Yeah.
But what causes it? Is it just random chance?
Well, it's not just random chance, although that certainly plays a role.
Okay.
The book really digs into a number of factors that contribute to noise in our judgment. One of the big ones is something they call occasion noise.
Occasion noise.
Yeah, occasion noise.
What is that?
So think about it this way.
Okay.
Have you ever noticed how your mood can affect your decisions?
Well, absolutely.
Right.
Like, I'm way more likely to order dessert if I'm feeling good.
Right.
But I always figured that was just, human nature.
Sure. Well, that's part of it.
Yeah.
But the book argues that these seemingly random fluctuations in our internal state can actually introduce a lot of noise into our judgments. It's not just mood either.
Okay.
Things like fatigue, time pressure,
Yeah.
even the weather
Really?
can affect how we evaluate information.
Wow. So it's like our brains are constantly being bombarded by all these internal and external factors that we're not even aware of.
Right.
And that's what's making us, more or less likely to make certain decisions.
Exactly. And that's why they call it occasion noise.
Okay.
Because the same person can make different judgments about the same thing on different occasions, depending on these fluctuating factors.
So is there any way to control for this?
Right.
I mean, you can't just like stop feeling emotions
Oh, no
or
kidding, God.
getting tired, right?
Right. And the book acknowledges that some level of variability is inevitable, but
Yeah.
that doesn't mean that we're powerless.
Okay.
The authors introduce this concept of decision hygiene.
Decision hygiene.
Yes.
Okay.
Kind of a set of practices that we can use to minimize noise,
Hmm.
much like, washing our hands.
Yeah.
Helps us avoid getting sick.
Decision hygiene. I like that. Okay, what are some of these practices?
So one of the most powerful tools,
Okay.
especially in fields like medicine, is the use of guidelines.
Uh-huh.
So think about something like the APGAR score,
Okay.
which is used to assess the health of newborns.
Right.
Instead of relying on one big subjective judgment,
Right.
it breaks the assessment down into these 5 specific checks:
Okay.
appearance, pulse, grimace, activity, and respiration.
So by having those really clear objective criteria, it's kind of preventing doctors from making those inconsistent judgments.
Exactly, based on their own, individual biases or the specific circumstances of that moment.
So it's taking the guesswork out of it.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And the book argues that this kind of structured decision-making can be applied to all sorts of fields, not just medicine.
Right.
They talk about how Google uses structured hiring processes to reduce noise in their personnel decisions.
Oh, interesting.
Instead of relying on gut feelings, they use standardized tests, structured interviews, and multiple independent assessments to evaluate candidates.
So you're relying on data
Right.
and consistent criteria instead of just going with your gut.
Exactly. And that can make a huge difference in terms of reducing noise and improving the quality of our decisions.
Okay, so guidelines, structured processes. Those are some good starting points.
Yeah.
But what about like in our everyday lives? Are there just like simple things that we can do
Sure.
to try to reduce noise in our own personal decisions?
Absolutely. One of the simplest things is just to be aware of the potential for noise, right? Recognize that your mood, your energy level, even the time of day can affect your judgment. If you're making an important decision, try to do it when you're feeling rested and focused,
Yeah.
and in a fairly neutral mood.
So no big decisions like right before bedtime
Probably not a good idea.
or after a really stressful meeting.
Right. Another thing you can do is to just slow down
Yeah.
and think things through carefully.
Right.
Don't rush into decisions, especially if they're irreversible.
Right.
Take some time to gather information, consider different perspectives,
Yeah.
and really weigh the pros and cons.
Like that old saying, measure twice, cut once.
Exactly. And if you're really struggling with a decision, try talking it through with someone you trust.
Okay.
Sometimes just having another person's perspective can help you identify those potential sources of noise
Yeah.
and make a more informed choice.
This is great advice.
Yeah.
It's like you're giving us a toolkit
I hope so.
for better decision making.
Yeah, that's the goal.
Yeah.
And the book emphasizes that decision hygiene isn't a one-time fix. It's an ongoing process, something we need to be mindful of in all aspects of our lives.
Okay. So we've talked about noise. We've talked about decision hygiene.
Yeah,
It's a lot to digest.
it is.
There's one more concept from the book I kind of want to unpack a little bit.
Okay.
And it's this idea of objective ignorance,
Yeah.
which sounds kind of heavy, but I'm curious to hear more.
Yeah, it is a bit heady,
Yeah.
but also really important.
Good.
The book argues that even if we could eliminate all bias and all noise,
Yeah.
which is a tall order in and of itself,
Right.
there are still inherent limits to what we can know about the future, and that's objective ignorance.
So it's not about like being dumb or being uninformed.
Right.
It's just about acknowledging that there are some things we can't possibly know.
Exactly. And the book kind of breaks this down into 2 types:
Okay.
intractable uncertainty
Okay.
and imperfect information.
All right. So intractable uncertainty.
Yeah, so intractable uncertainty refers to things that are just fundamentally unpredictable, like the outcome of a coin toss or the long-term effects of a new technology.
So no matter how much data we have
Right.
or how good our analytical skills are,
Exactly.
some things are just inherently unknowable.
There are.
Okay. What about imperfect information?
So imperfect information refers to things that could be known in principle,
Okay.
but we just don't have access to that information at the time we need to make a decision.
Oh, so for example, like you can interview a job candidate extensively,
Right.
but you don't really know how they're going to actually perform in that role 5 years down the line.
Exactly. Their skills might evolve. The company might change. Who knows?
It's making me think about all the times, where I've been so certain about something
Yeah.
only to be proven like totally wrong.
Of course.
Yeah, like who could have predicted 20 years ago
I know.
the rise of like, I don't know, cat videos on the internet.
Right, exactly.
Right.
And that's why the book emphasizes the importance of humility.
Okay.
We need to acknowledge that our knowledge is always incomplete, that the future is inherently uncertain, and that even our best judgments are susceptible to error.
So what's the takeaway here?
Right.
I mean, should we just give up on planning and decision-making altogether?
No, not at all.
Okay.
It's about becoming more sophisticated in how we approach decisions.
Okay.
Right. Recognizing objective ignorance doesn't mean we should just throw our hands up in despair. It means we should be more cautious about making big decisions
Okay.
based on long-term predictions that we just can't be sure about.
So instead of betting the farm
Right.
on this one single, far-off outcome,
Yeah.
we should maybe focus on making, like, smaller, more adaptable plans.
Exactly. It's about being flexible,
Okay.
being willing to adjust course as new information becomes available.
This whole conversation has been, like, a real eye-opener.
It's been fun.
I feel like I have a much deeper understanding now,
Yeah.
not only of noise and decision-making,
Right.
but also just, like, the limits of human knowledge.
It's been great diving into this with you. And hopefully these insights will help you make, more informed, more thoughtful decisions in all areas of your life.
I think they will. And for folks listening out there, if you want to explore these ideas further,
Yeah.
I highly recommend checking out the One Book a Day YouTube channel.
Absolutely.
I'm sure they've got some fantastic videos that go even deeper into noise.
Yeah. Great resource.
You'll find a link to that in the episode description, along with a link to buy the book from Amazon
Yep.
if you want to read it yourself.
There's always more to learn.
Yeah,
And sometimes it's helpful to hear these concepts explained
Yeah.
from different perspectives.
absolutely. Well, that's all the time we have for today's deep dive.
Okay.
Thanks for joining us on this exploration of noise.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
And we'll see you next time for another fascinating journey into the world of knowledge and ideas.